I walked in the door about 3 minutes ago. Surfing amazing waves up the east coast of Tasmania after spending a few days on a private island with Luke doing some shooting. So it's been my best anti-COVID week ever. It's first time the last week that I've been out of the house in 4 months, just about. So feel like I'm reclaiming my soul again, and very excited to pick up the new Canon R5 in the morning and give that a good spin. Definitely want to hear Lukey's thoughts about the new Sony was released last night.
Absolutely.
But I'm most especially interested in hearing about the Sapphire Coast and the South Coast of New South Wales, which has been on my radar for a long time, and I've sort of whipped through it a few times and haven't really had time to dig under the surface and delve into it. There's a lot of magical places there. Lukey's familiar with some of them. David's very familiar with them. Nick and I don't have a freaking foggiest. Well, I'm speaking of myself, Nick, but I guess it was. So the idea, I guess, that Lukey really had a good thought about was that we produce a number of shows where we kind of virtually travel around Australia and we highlight and showcase some of the premier landscape locations in the country. And what a better way to do that than through the eyes and words and imagery of one of the top local photographers from the region. And so this is kind of our first time doing that. And we've already got a number of amazing photographers lined up from around the country already to do this. So it just felt like it was more in the spirit of things were opening up. So let's get excited about traveling. And in some ways they are, because it looks like Tassie and WA and Northern Territory and South Australia are sort of going to be having a bit of a bubble going on. And, so we thought, why not sort of just start putting our eyes a little bit further afield and getting a bit excited and passionate about when we can get out there. And Davey's our first guest, but I'll let Lukey introduce Davey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've known Dave for a few years now, and so originally we met in Sydney, and Dave was living up there. And I think you're originally from down the South Coast, aren't you, Dave? And so, yeah. So I think you were always thinking about heading back down, and so you made the move. And so I've been lucky enough to go down and visit Dave down at his place and do a bit of shooting around the area. And he's certainly very passionate about the place, which is not hard to see why when you have those beautiful blue sky days and the vivid blue waters of the Sapphire Coast there to enjoy. So I thought one of my very good friends, Ben Coops, actually put together a video about Dave. I think it was another little trip of mates, and Ben did a bit of a spot for Dave. So I think it might be a good way to introduce him. So I'll just share the screen and play that for you guys just to see this.
This is world premiere.
World premiere, exactly.
Oh, brilliant.
All right, so hopefully you can hear that.
For some reason I always got up early and went to the beach and went to the coast, whether it was for a swim or a surf before work, just to sort of start the day right. From going down there every day, just started noticing these amazing coloured skies in the morning. And I went and bought my first camera and then got completely hooked. From then on, it was just a photography bug that took over. As sort of my photography skills grew, there was always that desire to get back down to the far south coast because I knew the landscape, and I thought, how incredible would it be just to document all these places that I knew were sensational and grew up with. When you're doing landscape photography, it really connects you with nature. You kind of realise going out that every day is different. The sunrise, the winds, the tides, the surf, and it really sort of pulls you back to nature.
Check the video, brother.
Photo, particularly, in your hometown, you've got the added advantage of being able to revisit places over and over again. I really hunt for these spots and try and find the most perfect conditions. It's either finding drama or finding calmness in your when you go to these places, it's not me who's the artist, it's really Mother Nature who's the real artist here. I always put my creativity first, and through my work I feel like I want to give back to the community and give back these images to people that they can feel proud of and share and show their friends, hey, this is where I live, isn't it fantastic?
Cool. Just stop that.
Very nice.
Ben did a beautiful job there, mate. You're
You did,
looking
didn't
pretty
he?
rock star there, Davey.
I know. Well, someone's got to do it. But yeah, no, it's just sort of in what happens with the landscape photography community, making these great friends and all meeting up for a week of getting out there and taking photos. And it was really great to have Ben down, and video is what he does fantastic. And we were just out shooting, and Ben's behind the scenes taking all these videos and just strung it all together. It's pretty great. He's a very talented filmmaker.
Absolutely, he is. I think I played one of his that he did for me quite a few episodes ago when I was at Cradle Mountain. So yeah, no, very good value. We'll have to have Ben on a show about video, I think, coming up. It would be pretty cool. Yeah. So Dave, I think you had a little bit of a presentation to go through about the South Coast. That might be a nice way to lead in and show a bit of your work. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I should just probably start with a bit of background about me and sort of where I've come from and how I ended up here. And it probably will sort of highlight my influence in my photography. But yeah, I was actually born on the Sapphire Coast in Tathra, but sort of, moved away for work and school and never really came back. I had a career in media, working as an executive, not as a photographer or as a creative, basically, running around in a suit and doing deals with clients and so forth. And that was in traditional media, being in print and television. And then, as digital media grew, the sort of traditional media's sort of started to decline a lot. And so, my job in print media, the relevance was going away. And instead of staying to the end, it just so happened at the same time, my love for photography was growing. And, I used to see all our clients, instead of wanting stuff in print, wanted stuff in digital. And, people's attention spans online were decreasing more and more. And, what they were after was, really catchy, punchy headline and one super big hero image. And, I thought, I'm going to actually, try and apply my love for photography and go and, there is value in images now, especially online, especially if you can capture one that tells a story and it's very punchy. So, that's what I'm here to doing. And, if you look through my work, you'll see it's kind of, very touristy, lifestyle-y, very, saturated, feel-good stuff. And, and that's sort of, I suppose, comes out when you're down the Sapphire Coast. It is a tourist town and it's beautiful and there's lots of sunshine and blue skies. So it kind of, that's the way I'm heading. And, for now, I hope to develop that a lot further. But so yeah, when you see my images, that's where the background comes from. But I've got some photos to show. Let's go here.
David, do you feel like you've kind of got stock imagery in mind all the time when you're shooting?
Oh,
absolutely. That kind of tourism purpose?
That's only recently. I think the first, when I first started taking photos, it was more to feed my passion and my creativity. And, I kind of think when I left the corporate world, I did feel a bit burnt out. And, and so I just wanted to, give myself, 6 months or a year off really, and just sort of explore, a creative side that I'd never done before. And photography was it. So, the first year I was just being totally doing it for the love of what I love. And probably my earliest stuff is a lot more moody and crashing waves and dark and stuff. But, as the you know, as there became more interest and more commercial interest for tourism shots and community shots, that's kind of where I started to head now. And you know, now I try and focus in tying in not only a beautiful landscape shot, but trying to weave in just a little story in there, whether it's something about showing off the, you know, certain hero locations or icons, or, you know, when you do people, just trying to, yeah, just creating a little story that one person could look at it. Like, you know, my background shot's just a lovely, you know, sapphire blue scene with a yacht there. And, you know, I think that's a nice story of isolation in itself. So that's why I chose it today. So, but I'll just sort of, here we go. I'll skip over that one. But, you know, a lot of people actually...
The blue steel. I didn't get to hardly see it.
Blue steel.
Blue steel. Yeah, no. I hate photos of myself, but, you know, I have to...
yeah.
I have to give,
F-stoppers, eat your heart out. Come on.
I have to give cred to a very good friend and great portrait photographer down here, Brett Ritchie, who kindly came out one morning at sunrise and did a portrait shot for me. So he's
right. Well
awesome.
Done.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, a lot of people don't actually know where the Sapphire Coast is, but it's south coast of New South Wales, right down the bottom. If you're talking about tourism zones, sort of after Sydney, so you get down to Wollongong and Kiama, that's the Shoalhaven. Then you get from Batemans Bay area, that's Eurobodalla, and then sort of underneath that is the Sapphire Coast, which runs from Bermagui all the way down to the Victorian border. And a lot of people know Bermagui for Horsehead Rock and Camel Rock, but you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot beyond that, which, you know, I want to show you guys tonight. So
do you find that there's a particular, like, you get more with it being so close to a similar distance from Sydney or Melbourne, if you get more Melburnians or Sydney-siders, or I guess it'd be not more New South Wales?
it definitely tends, the South Coast tends to be more, in terms of tourism, probably more from Melbourne.
Yep. Oh, right.
Historically, I think they've, you know, gone north for their holiday, and it's a little bit warmer than Melbourne and so forth. I think Sydney-siders tend to travel north. But yes, it's definitely, with the improvements with the highway, especially the Pacific Highway, you do find more Sydney-siders are coming down this way, especially at the towns at the top end like Bermagui. It's with the improvements of the highway, there's people are able to come further and further down and explore the area. But you know, it's equally distant, 6 hours from Sydney, 7 hours from Canberra, and then Canberra's a very strong market as well. It's only 3 hours inland, and so you get a lot of Canberra weekenders who come down. They've got houses here and they come down every weekend. Or you can actually fly via Rexa Airlines from Sydney and Melbourne to the airport in Merimbula, and that only takes 1 hour to get here via that. And it's probably a good segue into something I did with the new airport at Merimbula. The Bega Valley Shire Council recently built a new airport terminal, and through the Bega Valley Regional Gallery, I was asked to do an opening exhibition there, which I was, you know, my very first exhibition, which was great. And so, you know, what I actually wanted to show off was some of the area that you could possibly and typically see as you're arriving by plane or leaving, and what better way to do that with drone work. And I wanted to show off sort of why they call it the Sapphire Coast, and it's because of these beautiful sapphire waters that you see from the inlets. You know, you get these special days, I call them, you know, sapphire days, and it's the blue sky and the crystal clear water. And, you know, when you throw the drone up, you can just see down into the depths of these, you know, inlets and the beautiful sand patterns. It just absolutely blew me away. It's just a perspective that, you know, you see via plane, but now with drones, it's incredible to see it. This is Pambula River mouth, and one of the most, you know, beautiful, pristine places on the coast. You know, if you sort of go further up that river, there's a huge oyster industry which goes on up there. That, you know, the Sapphire Coast is also sort of famous for its oysters. And here's another one that's a Wapango Lake, which is a, you know, beautiful and a special spot for me also. Here's another one. We see those ripples in the sand again in the inlets, and, you know, beautiful clear days. This is just a Tathra series I did, looking straight down onto the beach. Again, those beautiful waters. This is Tathra Wharf, which I'll show you a bit more about. Another place around Tathra called Kainini Bay, and, you know, I put all these together and put them up in the airport, and, you know, it's you know, got to say, it was I was very proud of my first exhibition, so it was a good experience.
It's been a lot more when it's your local place as well, and so
yeah, exactly,
help to show it off.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a good. So that I mean, that came down last week, so it was pretty sad to take those off the walls. So, but it was great. Then, you know, one of the big things that have happened here in this area over the past 2 years is the bushfires. I think everyone knows about the recent bushfires that currently happened in New South Wales. But, you know, when in Tathra, when we talk about bushfires, we talk about which one. You know, 2 years prior to this, you know, a lot of people might know but might not know, the town of Tathra, where I'm from, was hit by a pretty severe bushfire, and it came into town and destroyed up to 100 houses and one of the main caravan parks. And, you know, in a town where there's only about 500 houses, taking away 100 of them was pretty savage. You know, my neighbours, you know, next door, 3 of them just in a row, they all lost their houses, and at the end of the street as well. It's you know, there's about 5 houses gone. So
there was a point in time, Dave, where you didn't know if yours made it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Sydney at the time because I you know, I do some work and go back and forth. But I remember being in Bondi and getting calls going, "Have you seen the news?" And it's like, what? And I was just looking at, you know, footage and looking at the news, you know, trying to work out what was going, because it's you know, unfortunately the fires took out the telecommunications tower as well, so there was no mobile phone reception. So it was hard to get in contact with anybody. And, you know, I could see on the news my place with the fire brigade parked on the block next door, putting out the fire coming up the backyard with the house next door on fire. And it was like, holy. And so, yeah, it was a really terrible time. So I sort of hightailed it back down here to sort of find out what was going on and sort things out. But yeah, it was really devastating for the town. It was a huge blow, and it took a lot of time to recover. And, you know, there's still houses being built now, you know, still people building their houses now from that fire. And then, you know, only 2 years later to be hit again by another bushfire, but this time at a massive scale. You know, we all know how big that was, but in terms of Tathra, I suppose it covered all around it. It came up from Victoria to the south end of the Sapphire Coast and up to Eden. It was coming from the north and the west, and took out little towns like Cabargo, who, you know, lost a lot of their main street. So, you know, and the scale of that was mammoth. You know, it was much bigger than the Tathra fires. So there was a lot of, you know, hurting people and so forth. But these are just sort of, you know, this is sort of, I ran around on New Year's Day with the camera, and just, you know, as most people were preparing to celebrate New Year's Eve and party, this is kind of what it looked like in Tathra. Just at midday, just this orange haze. You know, this was the pub we were going to go to that night and celebrate New Year's Eve. And I went down to just all the spots around it. It was really interesting. This, you know, this is one of the boat ramps, Kainini Bay, and it was all orange, but there's this guy out just sitting on a chair fishing. And it was like, you know, I didn't know what he was up to, but he was just sort of doing his own thing while this was going on. This is the Tathra Wharf, which is normally, you know, blue and sapphire-y and headlands, but you could just sort of barely see it. And then the beach, what should have been a nice summer's day, the beach was closed mainly because you couldn't see. And you can just see here, just all the ash that was from the bushfires down south in Malakuta was just all blown up and washed up on the beaches, every beach, along the coast. It was just like that, tons and tons of it.
Did you feel, Davey, that you felt obliged to go out there and take photos, sort of as a community service? I mean, I know Luke and Paul and I have been through bushfires as well, and I know personally, I feel almost like I should be out there taking photos to raise awareness and to spread around and to document for history and that sort of thing. What are your feelings on that?
I really wish I went out and took more. Looking back now, particularly with the Tathra fires, I stayed out. One of the things that, when you're in these small communities, there are a lot of people who are hurting at the time, especially when it's going on. There's a lot of confusion and anger and sadness and so much emotion. And, I kind of didn't really feel right walking around with a camera, sort of wanting to take photos of people's houses and so forth. It was more of a time to, just help people out and so forth. But, saying that, I really think, I wish I did take more photos, just basically to document. And I think as part of the healing process for people, it would be good to sort of look back on that day, maybe not now, but 5 or 10 years ahead for future reference. But I really think taking photos of these things is really important. There was some awesome, not awesome, but amazingly impactful photos that came out of that. And depending on where you are also, I think you don't want to, at the time, race into fire zones. There's enough people trying to get out. So to run in there with a camera and be at the forefront, I think it's a little bit irresponsible. But if you're there at the time, and if you're stuck in there and you've got a camera, then there's some amazing photos that came out of a friend from Malakuta. She was, in there at the time and took an amazing series of photos. And also, Josh Birkinshaw from Bateman's Bay got some incredible shots, documenting the whole bushfire scene in Bateman's Bay. So, if the fire had come into Tathra at that time, I probably might have taken more. So, but yes, I think it's important.
Yeah, you're right about not getting in the way of other people and emergency services and being an unnecessary car on the road. But, like you said, if you get the opportunity and you're there, or you can do it safely because, the roads aren't closed where you are and you can get some shots from a distance, and of course, but don't get in the way.
No, exactly. And, I did offer my services to the Bega Valley Shire Council at the time, and just saying, if you want someone to document this, put my hand up and happily oblige. So, more beach scenes. These are people getting ready for their New Year's Eve dinner at one of the local restaurants, which there was a really somber mood. And this scene this photo I took kind of a little bit later. It wasn't New Year's Eve, but it was 4 days later. There was another catastrophic day where the temperatures rose up to the 40s and the wind was coming from a certain direction, and everyone had to prepare and get their houses ready and put out water and do things. And then that day everyone woke up and the streets all had meetings and everyone talked about the plan of attack and to help each other. And then what happened during the day was that everyone had to safeguard their house to about 4 o'clock that afternoon. And then the wind was changing direction, which would have put the town out of harm's way. But then what happened was at 4 o'clock everyone started cheering because the wind changed direction, and people left their homes and went down to the beach and took some beers and jumping in the water. And then all of a sudden the winds came from the south, and again this the sky turned yellow, and then orange, and then dark red, and then finally it went black at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and everyone's mood just sort of dropped again, and then the next morning, I'm normally up at before sunrise checking what's going to happen, and I think the sun was rising at 5:30 that morning, and 5 o'clock no light, 5:30 it was pitch black, 6 o'clock pitch black, 7 o'clock pitch black, and it was that following day was just the day that the sun never rose. It was quite eerie. So and I was talking about the ash before in the water. There was just tons of it in the beach, and this is a photo I took on the left is Kainini Bay. It's beautiful sapphire waters, and then during the bushfire, all the beaches and inlets turn this black color from ash and so forth.
Oh wow!
Yeah, wow.
And this is a photo I took sort of up in the mountains of a bit of the regrowth. This normally on the left is the rainforest gully, which is normally thick with tree ferns and so forth. And what normally happens in bushfires, these are safe zones. These are sort of wet zones, and these normally sort of block where the fires run through. But because of the drought, everything was so dry, it just sort of went right through these rainforests and creeks and took out everything. So, a combination of years of droughts, and it was just, very sad. But, good to say things are rebounding, and particularly after the rain, we've just had, 270 mils in 2 days. So it should, with that regeneration process.
Was there a bit of erosion from the rains, do you reckon?
I think so. Like the ocean is very dirty at the moment. But I think nature has a great way of cleaning things up pretty quickly. I think in a week's time the oceans will be clear, and there's definitely would have been erosion somewhere. Like a lot of the beaches, there's been a lot of sand movement so far, but bushland, I definitely think there will be erosion because there hasn't been rain since, and it's a very bare sort of forest floor. So, but it'll be interesting, after this rain we've just had. I can't wait to get out and document the regeneration process, particularly even in the parts that weren't affected by bushfire, the national parks. Just after 4 years of no rain, the national parks are looking, super dry, and the coastal Banksias didn't flower last year, and the tea trees are just all dying and falling over. So it still looked like a disaster zone, even the parts that weren't affected by fires. So it'd be good to see everything get back to normal.
Right.
And you talk about in these small towns, just the community spirit that goes on here. There's a lot of people. I suppose in the cities you don't really see much how events like this impact on the daily lives of the community, and from the person who owns a cafe to the farmer and producers. Everyone's sort of hurt in some way, and the area really relies on tourism a lot for its income and to support a lot of the people. So, with the sort of background I had in lifestyle media in Sydney, and just working with the local tourism board, the Sapphire Coast Destination Marketing, who are great guys. Just again, sort of working with them on a contract just to highlight the area and bring some fun photos, back in and entice people back to the area. And, it's from, getting people, back to the beaches with the safety message, or, promoting the industries that were hurt pretty hard, like the oyster industry, which is, as I said before, this area is quite famous for some of the best oysters in the world. And these were all used in different campaigns, so to speak. The catchline was, seeing your face will bring a smile to ours. So it was, looking at the positive side of everyone, from the small town sort of grocers doing things to, the these are friends of mine who run a little gin distillery. It's in town, who, you know, doing great things. And just the, you know, the adventure tourism groups, the paddle boarders and the surf schools and so forth. And, you know, people might recognize the back of, or the front of Camel Rock there. This is the Camel Rock Surf School, who are a great bunch of people as well. But just creating a bit of excitement, getting people back onto the coast. So, you know, I was really happy I could contribute back in that way. You know, another thing that, you know, I'm very passionate about or interested in, sort of want to explore with my photography is, you know, documenting and helping out the, you know, the traditional owners and the indigenous population here, which are known as the Yuin people. And, you know, I was saying to Luke before, you know, there's a lot of evidence of Aboriginal culture and lifestyle around in the national parks. And what I was noticing was, you know, when I go out and do landscape photography, you know, finding these beautiful vantage points of, you know, on headlands and looking at rock formations and so forth. It was, well, maybe it's not a coincidence that there was evidence of middens, which I'm not sure if everyone knows what a midden is, but it's a sort of a site that in the landscape that's been, you know, over thousands of years has been built up by shells. And what used to happen was the traditional owners of the land would sort of go out along the coastline and gather seashells and abalone and shell, you know, snails and so forth, and then bring them back to a certain point and feast on them there. And over years, they discard the shells. And in the landscape, you get these massive areas and mounds just full of shells. And, you know, you see them all down the coastline. So, you know, for me, thinking that these are the spots that the indigenous population collected the shells, and then they'd all go back and feast and gather and eat and, you know, tell stories at these beautiful locations, you know, looking over the beach. It was sort of like, you know, you get to think that they obviously had a appreciation for the beauty of the natural environment as well. So it was just fascinating. And, you know, the more I sort of read up about the local Yuin people, just sort of realizing how displaced their community was. And, you know, after talking to them and learning a bit about more, they're really in this fantastic space of, you know, healing and rebuilding and sharing stories. So, you know, they're very active in the culture that they, you know, promote around the area. And these are sort of a father and son. And the guy on the left is one of the elders who, you know, organizes a lot of the community festivals and so forth, and passes on information. But this was at a festival called the Gayong Festival, which celebrated sort of arts and culture of the Aboriginal community. And I think about 8,000 people came from all around Australia, and they had, you know, bands and talks and food demonstrations and everything. And, you know, I was kind of just lucky to be there and capture all these, you know, great imagery. And, you know, they sort of weaved it in with traditional ceremonies, you know, with all their amazing headdresses and gear and so forth, passing on to their stories onto the younger generation, but also tied it in with a modern sort of theme as well. They had these great Indigenous singers and songwriters and performers who came, and, you know, they had a band and a rock concert. And so it's great to do, you know, photos for these guys, which then, you know, a lot of them used for their own social media as well. And, you know, this is Baker Boy, and he's, you know, one of, you know, he's a well-known, well, I'm quite old, but in the youth market, he's got some, you know, he's one of the number one singer-songwriters in the country, and was actually Young Australian of the Year last year. So, you know, for these guys to all get together and through their music sort of perform to crowds, both, you know, Indigenous and European, and tell their stories, it's a way of communicating and getting their message across. So it's been interesting to do that, follow that journey. And this was another interesting, for me anyway, for a experience that I had just before Christmas, just before the bushfires. Actually, the landscape just looked horrible. You know, I think people were realizing that we're in for a catastrophic time. You know, the bush was dying, the grass was dead, and the UN population, the UN people here got together and performed this corroboree that they hadn't done for over 150 years, and performed it to the mountain in the background is known as Gulliga. And on the Sapphire Coast, it's actually the most sacred mountain that, you know, they believe that all life was created from this mother mountain. So it's the most sacred area there. So they held a corroboree to, you know, ask for, you know, forgiveness or help from Gulliga to actually make it rain and heal the land. So it's amazing. About 500 UN people all dressed up in traditional outfits, doing dances, healing dances, and there was a lot of, you know, information being shared between elders. Yeah, you can see that you know, the headdress and all the traditional dress that they're wearing are sort of special to each person in each clan. They've all got totems. You know, passing on, this is the kangaroo dance they did, and then, you know, feeding it on, these stories and dances, to the next generation who will grow up. So really, you know, they're in a great sort of healing phase, and really keen to pass their stories on to the next generation. So it's been a great experience to sort of work and document these guys. So,
was there a particular moment in time where you sort of became more interested in learning about the Aboriginal culture? I only say that because I had a particular moment in time where I was suddenly woken up to it, and just how amazing it was, and just what effects there were on the landscape, and what evidence there was of so many thousands of years of Aboriginal occupation of the land. Was there something in particular that sort of made you think, wow?
Well, I think it was definitely sort of looking at the, you know, sort of being there with the middens sort of spot that, but also just, you know, I think the national parks do a great job of putting up stories and information about traditional cultures on their information boards and so forth. And, you know, I just started reading that, and, you know, learnt some pretty horrific figures about, you know, what happened to them and so forth. And, you know, it sort of came from a point of wanting to know and wanting to help, and being, you know, here's this culture that for 60,000 years they lived harmoniously with the land, and, you know, 200 years later we're doing horrible things to it. And, you know, so I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from them and share information about, you know, protecting our lands and protecting, you know, nature, and being, you know, caring for it. I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think I hope things have changed in the education of kids and stuff at school. From when I was at school, I didn't get a lot of exposure to Aboriginal culture. I got some, but not a lot. But it was really actually being out in the landscape and looking at middens and hut depressions like we have here on the coast, and seal hides, and having an Aboriginal person tell me about what that actually was, and actually pointing it out and saying, you know, this shows you what we were doing, you know, 3,000 or 30,000 years ago. And you just start looking at it a bit more carefully, and it just blows you away, just how much history is right there and how much culture. And I really, I wasn't ignorant to Aboriginal culture, but I just didn't know enough about it. And it was such a blessing to have someone able to show me personally on the land just what the cultural landscape was.
Oh, yeah, totally agree. I mean, some of the stories are fascinating about their culture. There's an interesting sort of walk that goes on called the Bundian Way. And what happens, it's actually an ancient pathway that connects the coast down here to the top of Kosciuszko. And, what traditionally happened was that after whale season, the Aboriginals would take this journey and go up, follow the Bundian Way, which was a pathway up to the snowy mountains, to get up there and feast on the bogong moths, which had migrated there. But it wasn't only the Yuin people going there. There were clans from north, south, east, and west. They'd all meet up there and feast on these bogong moths, which arrived by the tons, and they'd all, trade and do corroborees up there, and then sort of venture back. And there's actually been cases of shells that have been known to sort of come from Bermagui in Wallaga Lake, and they've found them up the top of at the snowy mountains, and obviously used to trade and do whatever. So yeah, it's interesting story.
Yeah, amazing.
I also I gave a talk at a astronomy club in Sydney, and there was a gentleman there that was doing a lot of research on the Aboriginal interpretation of the night sky, and so he actually said that area is actually quite rich with like, I guess, Aboriginal astronomy and those sort of aspects. I'm not sure if it's true, if that's where the emu in the sky reference comes from, but yeah, but that's I thought that was quite fascinating. So it's very rich in that culture for sure.
Oh, definitely. And I know it's probably a good segue too to go into look at Bermagui, but a lot of photographers know about Horsehead Rock and Camel Rock, but that area is actually very rich in traditional culture also. Around there's a lot of freshwater ponds and creeks, and there's a lot of evidence. If you walk over the headlands around that area, you can find flints and tools and weapons and so forth. But yeah, it's very rich, and there's actually an Aboriginal story there as well, which relates to Camel Rock and the headlands around there, which is totally different to how we see it as photographers. So it's something that I'll definitely be wanting to photograph those stories and try and tie a narrative in around, to try and educate photographers in general about the different stories in the landscape. So it's a project for me moving forward.
Awesome.
But but now it's time for a shameless plug on the area. I was talking to the guys. I was talking to the guys before about what's currently happening is social distancing and isolation, and it's just who knows when we're going to be able to travel overseas again or interstate and so forth. So I think it's really important that finding things within our own country that we can do, and there's so much that we can do. And I would highly recommend anyone who is used to traveling overseas once a year to Iceland or Patagonia or wherever you are drawn to, to easily come and spend 2 weeks on the South Coast. There is so much to do, and I'd kind of like to show you now like a few of my favorite places. How the sort of the towns and national parks work. But feel free to totally jump in and you can
and if you spend $30 on a beer in Iceland, go and spend $30 on beers on the south coast of New South Wales.
Oh yeah,
that's a good idea. Make sure it's one for one. if you
Oh, you only
spend
need to buy one beer in Iceland for $30.
Oh, yeah.
if you spend $2,000 in airfares, I'm sure it's more than that to get to Iceland. Spend $2,000 on your trip from Melbourne to the south coast of New South Wales. I reckon that's a good plan.
Oh,
That'll
yeah.
really inject
Once
some
the
money.
restrictions, yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, also the good thing about here, for people who love travel and, outside of photography, there's so many cool little places to stay accommodation wise, and pubs are cool and cafes are great. And there's lots of great experiences you can sort of do along the way, all run sort of by, the local tourism groups. And, if you want to see what's going on, Facebook or Instagram, follow Sapphire Coast, New South Wales, and you can see all the great things that go on in the area. So, but I mean, Bermagui, starting here, Bermagui is really the gateway to the Sapphire Coast. You come off the highway and turn off, and Bermagui is one of the first towns. It's also, I think it's possibly one of the most photogenic towns in Australia.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's, throwing up your drone and looking over here, like you get those beautiful Sapphire Coast waters and so much going on. But
is that a pano, Dave, that shot?
Oh, it sure is. So,
yeah.
It's, I mean, Bermagui looks great from above. I think, droners will, it's a droner's paradise as well as a traditional camera paradise, Yep, love it. But, I've got, and feel free to criticize my photos too, so it's cool. But
nothing of the sort.
I think, I mean, Bermagui is really, a lot of people come here for Horsehead Rock, and, they come for Horsehead Rock and Camel Rock, and then they go, basically. But there is so much more. And, I think what's great for me as well is just the amount of cool, great, fun people that come down for the weekend and want to photograph Horsehead and Camel Rock and get in contact, and they're like, hey, Davey, come up, we're here this weekend. So it's actually a really good way of staying in contact with a lot of friends and photographers around the country. It's I'm always happy to, go up and meet people and photograph with them. So it's a great way to stay in contact. But, this is kind of one of my, everyone dreams of getting that fiery sky over Horsehead Rock, and it came true for me one day, and it was one of the, photography highlights of the year for me. And this is the photo I ended up sort of liking the most out of that sort of experience in the morning. And for the record, I shoot a lot of vertical stuff. I think it's a hangover from working in magazines, looking at full page images. So,
we probably know how versatile they can be.
Oh yeah, put a headline up there and some text there, and you've got yourself a great commercial shot. So,
and the interesting thing about Horsehead is how much it can change over the years too. I've been there when it's almost been all rocks and then almost all sand, and it's quite a dynamic coastline that way. Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, it's quite interesting. A lot of locals don't know about Horsehead Rock. I think it's anyone who's been there knows it's quite difficult to get to, and it's actually quite dangerous, can be dangerous. If you go at high tide with a bit of swell, you can hurt yourself. It's lots of sharp rocks. So it's not actually promoted that, that heavily to the tourism area, just for the fact that it's not accessible. But there is a beautiful walk that goes from the Camel Rock car park up over the headland now, and you can sort of jut out at any point and look down upon the rock as well. So, and I think they're going to sort of improve on that walk as well. So that's a great one to do. If you're not confident about rock hopping and want to see Horsehead Rock from above, that's
still quite a good shot from up there too.
Oh, it's amazing shot. Yeah, absolutely amazing. And I'm still chasing my ultimate Camel Rock shot. I've got I want a really a stormy shot with a lightning bolt going across the top. I don't think I'm asking for too much, but I'll get it one day. But this is sort of one of my favorite ones. And as Luke was just saying, one of the great things about being local to the area, you can visit these places on lots of different occasions. And on this occasion was when that sand, there was so much sand that was dumped around Camel Rock that you could have actually, at low tide, you could walk out and jump up on it, which you can't normally do. And even Horsehead Rock was covered by sand, but the sand's gone now. But this was a shot that I loved because you could actually get a reflection of Camel Rock there in the sand, which you can't really do unless you get these freak experience.
And that's such a good point to always visiting a scene and think about what's different and what might change, and without that local knowledge, you wouldn't have thought of this being a harder shot to get in the future. So it's always a good thing to find something different about these scenes.
We agree, and I think that's where you do get the local advantage, is that you can revisit. You can come to a place, revisit it over and over again, work out what the best conditions are, and then one day it all comes together and you get your shot. So, as you probably know, in Tasmania as well. So,
oh yeah, that's why I moved down here.
Yeah, exactly. But other things that people can do when they're down here is the blue pool is just absolutely beautiful, and I've got lots of shots from here, but it's sunrises at Blue Pool are just incredible. If you get some days you get this perfectly mirrored pool juxtaposed against the sort of rough sea, and if you get a nice sky, you can get these great reflections, and even the morning first light just lighting up those cliffs golden. It's a really beautiful spot and worth sort of staying another day to do a morning sunrise at Blue Pool. So,
and it's also good for astrophotography as well.
Oh yeah,
because it has a nice east facing. I've got an astro shot I can show later from there. So,
yep. And then I was talking about Droner's Paradise. This is sort of over Bermagui Harbour, and it's that's Gulaga in the distance, sort of the mother sacred mountain. I like this because it's sort of photo, because it sort of combines the ancient and the modern, sort of being the boats and the harbour down here, the man-made, and the top half of the photo is sort of the glowing traditional and dreamtime sort of sequence. So this is one of my favourite photos that I kind of love, and for me kind of represents the area of having that tradition, but with the modern tourism element to it.
With this shot, is that a vertical panorama or just a single frame from portrait mode?
It's a single frame from portrait mode.
I keep lamenting, and Dave knows this well, but I used to fly the Mavic Pro 1, and that had this beautiful feature of being able to flip the gimbal to portrait, so you could actually take a portrait orientation photo. And the Mavic Pro 2, they actually removed that feature, and so Dave's got all these amazing portrait shots and portrait videos of around the Sapphire Coast, and it's just not quite the same, unfortunately. Mavic 2. So,
I mean, I'd actually be, if my Mavic Pro fails me, I'd actually be tempted to buy it again just for that function alone. So, and this is, this is one I went out. Luke was there at the time. We were out outfitting to just a bit further south of Bermagui at Cullagee. There's a cool little rock formation that the locals know as One Tree. And this particular morning, luckily, we had these. I suppose it was the most amazing sky I've ever seen. This was just a small part of it, but it was basically a 360 psychedelic thing going on. And
that's a cracker.
Looking back, we're probably in the wrong position to take full advantage of it, but it still, was a beautiful backdrop for this location. And there's so many different compositions you can do on this one. That's definitely worth spending another day on the Sapphire Coast just to get this shot. Next town down from Bermagui is my hometown of Tathra. And it's I love Tathra, and there's a lot of die-hard Tathra fans around. It's just fantastic. And in the town itself, one of the most interesting things I love is just this old historical wharf that's been here for hundreds of years, probably 100 years, and It was originally used to ship livestock and goods up and down the coast from steamer ships. And I think out of Tathra, it's just my favourite thing to photograph. It's also because it's only like 5 minutes from my house. So I can sleep in and run there for a sunrise or sunset. So this is a shot that I got, you know, one winter morning looking under the pier using a tele lens, you know, up to my waist in water to try and get this shot of the sun sort of coming up underneath the wharf. This is just a, you know, beautiful, another drone shot, sort of with some clouds in the background. You know, in the high seas, you can get these shots with the waves coming up underneath the rocks and creating some drama. Or, you know, using the drone again to look down on the Sapphire Coast waters. It's just, this is a shot sort of, you know, used, you know, the planning tool to work out. There's one moon phase a year where the moon comes up underneath the wharf, but unfortunately there was a cloud bank there that stopped me from I love. You can just see it sort of just underneath there. And then I went again. This was 2 years ago, and I went again last year, and it was a cloudy night. So I'll have to try again for the end of this year for the full moon rise under the wharf. I'll get it one day. So
yeah, you'll get it, mate.
And then, you know, this is one shot that actually Luke came down and helped me out sort of doing, but it's the Western astro setting in the Western horizon over
Western Fall. Yeah.
Western Fall. So it was a shot that I sort of wanted to get in for a long time, and, you know, Luke helped me with that one. So
you already knew you had already had a great shot from there. It was very inspiring. So we had to do it.
Just had to finesse it. So it's it's a great shot for me. Moving down the coast, Malinbara is the where the airport is, and it's got this, you know, beautiful lake, and it's a great holiday destination. There's loads of apartments for rent, and, you know, cool RSL clubs and funky restaurants, and it's a bit of the Miami of the Sapphire Coast. And, you know, one particular place I love is an area called Fish Pen, and it's just sort of typifies the area with all these small fishing jetties and boat ramps and so forth. And this is a shot I got sort of a couple of weeks ago of golden hour down there. But you see, I think this was a 2-minute long exposure at sunset, just stilling up the water. And there's all these, you know, colourful boat sheds that, you know, even if you're just a novice photographer, going down there and getting these colours and sheds makes for an awesome photo. So, yeah, and this is just sort of another boat shed. This one's called Michi's Jetty. It's quite famous down here for its great coffee and paddleboarding and so forth. So it's definitely worth a visit there. And then we've got.
I'm following along all this on Google Maps. I'm zooming in and out.
Oh, really?
Trying to work out all these places, because
I think what we'll do is we'll bring up a Google map once Davey's done, and we'll just go through it and point a few things out. Yeah.
So basically, the towns I'm running sort of through town by town, running down the coast. So Batangabi, Tathra, Malinbara, and then the final big town. There's a few little ones in between, Pandilla, but the final one at the end is Eden, and Eden's sort of got you know, it's this big bay called Twofold Bay, and there's lots of little hidden beaches and coves in there. This one's Kokora Beach down there. I've got a lot more exploring to do in Eden. But one of the main features in Eden is Mount Imlay, which here just covered by a little bit of mist. Looking back over one of the headlands again, this was taken from a space where there was a huge Aboriginal midden looking up into the you know, the heights of Mount Imlay. So, and then another thing which I sort of love. I mean, I love an ocean pool, I've got to be honest. And throwing the drone up, you know, looking at this one, I just love
great.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of like this again, the juxtaposition of the smooth surface of the pool with the kind of rocky, dramatic headland. It looks like, for me, some kind of monster spewing out an ocean pool. You look there, it looks great. And then, you know, from above, I kind of love that look. That was sort of my last adventure down to Eden. Took those 2 shots.
Beautiful.
And that's kind of it for towns, and then we'll go into national parks. I don't know whether you wanted to show on Google Maps the towns.
Oh yeah, look, we can switch to that. I'll just take the screen share and just go over that. Just put it onto this one.
There's quite a few national parks by the look of it in the area.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Heaps of national parks.
So here's where Bermagui is, where Davey started from, and then moving down, we've got Tathra down here, and then we've got Merimbula here, and then Eden through here as well. So, and then I think this is one of the national parks you talk a lot about, isn't it, Davey? Benboy.
Yeah.
There's quite good stuff down there, but yeah, it's quite nice. You've got these settlement towns where you've got awesome pools and features there, but then kind of interspersed between the towns, you've got these parks, and then there's also beautiful beaches and other things in there. So it's kind of like it must be very hard to choose what to go for after a while.
There's so much here, and it just and the great thing about it, it's all pristine. Like the national parks, you know, no development. It's just lovely places to explore. So that kind of puts it in context. And as you said, Luke, yeah, I'll talk now about the national parks that are in between. Yeah,
and this is where Camel Rock and Horsehead Rock are. So you can actually see the car park is here, and then to get to Horsehead Rock, you actually need to walk around this rock shelf here. And you can see this is probably taken at high tide on the maps here, because the you know, there's not much sort of area to walk across, although you know, you can walk along the top of these rocks here. And then around here. So ideally you'd have it at low tide also, or lowish tide around Horsehead Rock, so you can actually get a little bit closer in and stand on these rocks here, which a lot of the photos are actually taken in that position. But yeah, you do have to be very mindful of the tides and have good.
It's a bit tricky. Yeah. I mean, I'd recommend for anyone doing it, if they arrive early in the day, sort of go for a bit of a walk around there.
Yeah, do a bit of a recce beforehand, just to suss it out and make sure it's something that you can do. And always use a very good head torch and some really good footwear as well, just to make sure. Definitely no thongs or anything like that. That won't work. And I think Davey mentioned the rock there is actually really quite sharp. And if you take a tumble, you're almost certainly going to get cut up pretty badly. So definitely worth just playing it safe with that. But Camel Rocks, I actually run workshops in this area, and so a lot of the time, if people have accessibility issues getting around to Horsehead Rock, then they can still very easily get into Camel. It's only just past the beach here in the main viewing area of Camel Rocks, just in this point here. And so, you know, that's a amazing backup option for them. So there's always something to do there, which is great.
And Camel Rock's great in all weather, all conditions: sunrise, sunset, daytime. It's just one of those real versatile places. So
yeah, it sure is.
Let me just share screen again. Yep. And then we sort of, you know, as I said, you know, between Bermagui and Tathra, there's Mimosa Rocks National Park, and this is my all-time favorite national park. You know, I grew up. This is the place sort of we frequented when we were kids, all the different beaches and so forth. So I know it really well, and it's a very special place for me. And it's one of the places I just go to all the time. And you know, it's not sort of one track. As you drive down, there's all different turn-offs that you can take that take you to inlets and beaches and headlands and rocky. So there's so much to explore. And you know, I kind of, the photos that I'll show my favorite places, but I think it's good to actually, you know, get in there and have an explore and you know, try and work out where these places are for yourself, locations. But the Mimosa Rocks, name actually comes from, as you see here, this is a camp spot called Araganu. If you look in the foreground, there's these beautiful kind of river stones that are all smooth, and you know, that's known as the Mimosa Rocks. This is the Mimosa Rocks of Mimosa Rocks Park. But it's very typical. You find a few little bays with these rocks on them that sort of represent old mouths of ancient river mouths, and they're sort of dumped on, you know, on these other basalt sort of headlands, between the basalt headlands. So again, you get these great juxtaposition between, you know, sharp, rocky headlands with these beautiful, smooth, round sort of boulders. It's a lovely spot. You know, you can see it here again. Again, these, you know, beautiful black boulders from the sites of ancient riverbeds. This is Araganu, which is a great place to camp, actually, if you're, you know, love camping, and it's got so much great photography potential, whether it's, you know, beautiful, you know, low swell, crazy skies, or whether it's, you know, a clear sky with a bit of swell here. There's compositions for days here. I love it.
And astro as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was going to throw in an astro shot,
yeah.
but yeah, we've been there and done astro. It's got it all. And even on, you know, grey, overcast days, you know, when I probably would have maybe slept in, gone out, and I think this is a 3-minute exposure on a overcast day, and it brought out beautiful patterns in the sky and that ghostly feel. And it, you know, this is one of my favourite shots, and I never thought I'd get a favourite shot from an overcast day. So it's very surprising what you'll find in Mimosa. And of course, it's we get some fantastic swells that come in, and this is exactly. This was a great swell day, and you know, there's a group of us when these conditions come up. Luke, you know, Mr. Pete Hannon,
yes,
Brett Ritchie, and we all go out with our tele lenses and try and find great headlands that capture the surf. And this is one of these beaches in Mimosa Rocks where you can actually go out on a headland and shoot into the barrel of waves. It's fantastic.
Wow.
And then this is one of the lakes inlets here that's also famous for its oysters. I think I showed you maybe at the start a aerial shot looking down into the sapphire waters of this, but this has became a favorite spot of mine, sort of reading the conditions at low tide. The water movement was so gentle, it just created these beautiful ripple patterns when it was completely low tide. So I used to, you know, plan low tide at sunrise and then go out and see what happened at these spots. And also happens the day that, you know, Luke came down, we had a few other people visiting as well. We went out and got this ridiculous red fiery skies, which, you know, created this pattern. So
had the most incredible light, like morning after morning. It was just unreal.
Yeah. So
is the those ripples always there, Dave, or have you been there and it's?
No, it's only at low tide, but now there's been a bit of it with all the we've had 2 East Coast lows come through, and a lot of these inlets of, you know, the sand sort of have all changed. So it'd be interesting to go back and revisit next low tide to see whether this sort of phenomenon still occurs after but yeah, the channels have completely shifted. So I hope it's still okay, because it's such a great thing to photograph.
Oh, it's really a joy to shoot in a place like that where you've got so many leading lines and you can really just pick and choose which ones you include. And that headland also in the distance gives an opportunity to shoot it front on or put a little bit in the corner. And so you can, yeah, it's got a lot of scope.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of fun. And then this is one of my favorite locations. It's at Gillard's beach, and it's just a rock pinnacle in the middle of the beach, right at the end. But this is sort of like one of those dream shots I was chasing forever, with the reflection of the pinnacle picking it up in the sand reflection and getting that coloured sunrise to reflect in there as well. So that was lots of visits back and forth. But this sort of location looks equally great at high tide with the waves smashing against that rock and so forth. So many different compositions you can get from here, particularly if you love, water flow and capturing, water flow at like a third or half a second and freezing stuff. This is a great location to do all that. I kind of love the serene scenes, I suppose. And this is just sort of one that I threw in there because it's sort of, you can almost see a love heart shaped rock pool there, and it's one of the image that I love. I actually think it's great. It's, at low tide, it reveals all these mossy green rocks, which you don't see that often. But the reason I threw it in, it was one of the images that the Bega Valley Shire Council sort of asked if I could provide an image to decal the front of their chamber in town, and this is the one I came up with. So if you ever come down and visit Bega, go into the main town, and you'll see this image adorning the Bega Valley Shire Council windows as you walk up to the building. So, and then this is a favourite image of mine, which got a lot of attention maybe 2 years ago. I kind of need to do it again. It's something, a photography moment that I'll remember forever. I think maybe we all have that 1 or 2 moments of uniqueness, but this was after chasing, bioluminescence. I saw it at the beach on that day and went into Mimosa National Park looking for it at night. And this is just a spot that I came across and I found and ended up shooting this spot for hours and hours and ruined my camera because of it. But the story there was, you can't see bioluminescence unless it's disturbed, or activated. So it's only when you activate it. But when I turned up to this spot, you couldn't see any of it. And I picked up a Banksia cone and threw it in the lake, and it sort of lit up blue. And then I was like, oh God. So I was setting my camera, on 30 seconds and then getting buckets of water and throwing it on. And the other shots I've got are all quite aggressive. You got splashing and sand and there. But then luckily, and it hadn't rained for ages. Luckily, it started raining, and the raindrops sort of were activating the bioluminescence around the lake. And so I managed to get this nice, smooth sort of look to it all, which almost looks surreal. So it was a very fun night. And as I said, I killed my camera with sandy hands and stuff, but it was well worth it. So next national park, that's Mimosa National Park. You've got Bonda National Park. And Bonda National Park is between Tathra and Marimbula. And it's really, the great thing about Bonda National Park is you've got Bonda Island here, which this is a photo I just took the other day with some nice misty mood going on there. But Bonda Island, I suppose this is showing it off really. It's a nice sunrise spot. There's cliffs and plants, and you can see here around the plant is the remains of an ancient midden as well. So another spot where the traditional owners ate shellfish and discarded the shells, and over time it's built up, and still seeing these middens here. But when I go there, I can just you can feel the energy, and knowing that a lot of people sat there ages looking at that headland eating shellfish. So great spot. But behind Bonda National Park, it's also beautiful. There's lots of lakes and lagoons, and one of the great things about I love about lakes and lagoons is their reflection ability. This is another one I took just the other morning, just before first light, and there's a bit of mist there, and the lake was dead still. And this is a tea tree forest coming right down to the edge of the lake, and giving you these perfect reflections. And I'm going to go go back and explore and get a few more of these, because I just love a reflection shot.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. This is just another kind of just showing the reflection there, and just the dramatic tea trees that are typical of the area.
Just beautiful, man.
Yeah, and here's same thing again, but just throwing a bit of foreground in. Yeah, and so when you get these, the great thing about Bondi, you can go and shoot your sunrise at over the island, and then when the sun's come up a little bit, you can go back into these lagoons, and providing that the winds, there's no wind, you can get these beautiful reflection shots. And even taking your iPhone, you can get a great shot as well with it. And then this is just another one of the lakes at sunset. It's beautiful. So Bondi Island and beautiful lakes. And then next national park is Benboy National Park. There's actually two sections to Benboy. There's, I call it Benboy 1 and Benboy 2. There's sort of hugs either side of Ian. The one at the end, this is Benboy National Park, where there's a famous multi-day walk called the Light to Light Walk. And it starts off at Benboy, Old Benboy Tower. And you can, hike down and camp. You hike along the coastline and camp along the way, jutting out at these crazy sort of formations that adorn the whole area, the whole walk all the way down, just cliffs and crazy patterns. This is one of the camp spots there, and good surfing there, Paul. So,
oh yeah.
This is cool.
And how long is fair way to truck your board in, I'm guessing?
Oh, no, it's not too bad. You can camp right on this beach. It's
okay,
yeah.
Cedar Road, so I was wondering.
Yeah. It's a really very accessible place. So you don't have to. Yeah, you can drive into these camp spots along the way.
Saltwater Creek Campground.
Saltwater Creek Campground. That's it.
What that is. I'm looking at it on. I'm sure it's the right one. Looking at it on Google.
Yeah, look at those lines, Nick.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then you go a bit further down and you come to a place called Batangabi Bay, which again is one of those amazing, sapphire water places where if you get the right conditions, the whole area just lights up, that sapphire blue color. So, I've got a million shots of this, but I've could have chosen the one that shows it off the best. And then you come to the end of the walk, and they call it the Light to Light because you get down to Green Cape Lighthouse, which is there, which they've actually turned into, the old buildings. You can actually stay there through the national parks now and rent those out, and it's a pretty amazing spot. I've kind of, planning to go stay down there and love to do a bit more astro and a bit more sunrise.
So, yeah.
So,
do you know much about the light in there? If it's or like a very, will it work in like it has flashes or?
Not sure, but I will find that all out because I'd love to do one of those, a light trail around the lighthouse. Yeah, that's a goal of mine. So
it's nice too with lighthouses if you can find a contact and someone that's actually willing to turn the light on or off for you. Which you can do. I guess if it's an operational one that's needed for safety, it's obviously no good. But there's been others that I've been to where they can adjust the lighting for you so that it works better for your pictures. So
okay,
you can always ask about that.
I'll get onto that one. But beautiful multi-day walk if you're visiting the area. And then there's other parts too. In Benboy 1, I call it, the other side, just near Pambula, there's a great formation called Old Man Rock. And I think it's called that because it looks more like an old man from the ocean side and used as a bit of a boating navigation landmark rather than a photographer's landmark. So, I suppose there's open to change the name based on which side you're shooting from. So
Reminds me of a toad or something like that, more
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
exactly. But one of the great things about this spot, which I love, is that, for the coast, it actually works better at sunset than sunrise. So you can see here, this is sort of facing west. And if you get the right sort of angle during winter, you can get the sun coming or setting underneath this sort of lattice work of the rock, casting the light underneath. So, I know a lot of people on the East Coast, so many sunrise spots, fantastic, but sunset spots are a little bit more tricky. And this is a great one that you can have a go at sunset. So, making the place very versatile. And then one of my other favorite places is this formation called the Pinnacles. It's sort of right on the coastline, and there's nothing else like it here, but it's sort of this erosional formation where it's got this defined line of white sandy rock with a clay deposit on top, and it's the actual marking line of an ancient riverbed that was made from sand with clay deposited on top. So, when you're sort of coming upon this, it's very distinctive and nothing like it. So I've taken a shot. That's how it sits in the landscape. Really, there's no other spots exposing that white. But if you also look here, what I love about the drone shots, you look in the ocean, that sort of black line is a school of ocean salmon making their way down. So just an added bonus. So and that's kind of like, showing a lot of the iconic locations around. Obviously, there's a lot more smaller beaches and so forth within all these national parks, and so much to explore. So come on down. But the other great thing, and we'll go on to next, if there's any questions about the national parks, is talking about the whales.
Well, just one thing about the parks, there's some inland from the coast. What sort of highlights have you got there? And forest-wise and that sort of thing. It's something I'm particularly interested in.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be nothing compared to what you guys have got in Tasmania in terms of like beautiful forest land. There's a couple of national parks inland, the Southeast Forest, which I showed you, that fern gully that was burnt out. That's a beautiful area. You can go in there, and it's the wet sclerotial forests with creeks running down with these beautiful tree ferns, Dicksonia, Antarctica, running down the gullies. It's when they're all in their element, it's just beautiful rainforests walking through there. But still I think nothing on Tasmania, but still lovely.
Oh yeah, but different. And
different.
I was particularly there was a shot of you in the video that Ben Cooper shot with some really nice sort of. They looked a bit coastal. The eucalyptus, but some sort of like frondy type stuff. Yep. Where's that?
So that's Mimosa Rocks National Park, and Mimosa Rocks National Park is the vegetation is very unique. It's really typical of spotted gums.
Yep.
And burrowangs, which are the ferns. So the spotted gums are these beautiful sort of white bark trees. With this spotted leopard patterns all down them. They're almost like telegraph poles. They're just beautiful, really high. And then between them on the ground is these sort of cycad ferns called burrowangs, and they're really hardy, but it's really typical of Mimosa Rocks and unique to Mimosa Rocks as well. And I'm actually in the process now. There's that spot that in the video that Ben took is probably one of the, I've been hunting, going off track to find the, beautiful grove of burrowangs in the spotted gums, and, I've recently found it. So I've been going back again and again to try and find the perfect conditions to get photos from. So that'll be my next lot of stuff that comes out. But yeah,
It'd be amazing with that sort of very fine mist going through. You would think
yeah.
get that bit more depth, but it's stunning. Yeah, very eye-catching place. So yeah, certainly,
Yeah,
it
certainly
was
caught
obviously
my
safe
eye.
from the fires then too, which is good to know.
Yeah. And and it is a goal of mine too to do a bit more bushscape, particularly with the rain now. The bush should actually start to grow back. As I said before, it has been looking not so great without the rain and the drought, but I think after this, the burrowangs will green up. The banksias will start flowering again, and I think over the next year it'll be interesting to watch, document these national parks and bush coming back to life.
That'd be amazing.
So,
And maybe even like because of the rain, some what more wildflowers and things might come through in the spring as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that'll be fun to document. So, but yeah, so I'm onto that one, Nick. Don't worry.
Well, yes, I was thinking if you weren't, then I'd come up and do it for you. But it's a nice spot. It's just beautiful. I love forests like that. That's unique, and it was very. It looked very clean. Like you just had the frond stuff. You just had the beautiful gnarled sort of gums.
And the spotted gums are absolutely
else.
gorgeous as well. They're one of the most photogenic gums I've seen, I think.
There's actually a great artist here who works in pencil drawings, who goes into he's got this amazing series of pencil drawings from that national park with the burrowangs and the spotted gums, but he goes and spends puts about 200 to 300 hours into doing these fine detailed pencil drawings of exactly that, and they're just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And now the next exciting thing, and it's coming up soon at the in sort of September, October, November is whale season, and I was telling the guys before, it's really fun time of year down here. I'm not sure if everyone knows about the migration patterns of the humpbacks, but just simply the way it works is that during our summer, all the humpback whales are in Antarctica feeding on krill. And then during autumn, they start heading up the coast to the warmer waters of the Great Barrier Reef and Pacific Islands to give birth and mate. When they go up the coast, they sort of go up the west coast of New Zealand and then make a beeline over to sort of Sydney way and then go up the coast. So the whales that people are seeing now in Sydney are on their way up to the warmer waters. So the South Coast doesn't see any of the northern migration of whales. So from now, they're all sort of in Tonga and the Great Barrier Reef giving birth and breeding. And then during September, they start heading back down to Antarctica to feed on the krill over summer. So when they head south again, they come again past Sydney, but instead of going back over to New Zealand, they come straight down the east coast. And that's when they come past the Sapphire Coast. But the great thing is they're kind of a bit more chilled out. You get mothers and calves and so forth, coming in and resting in all these bays and areas. And it's a really sort of unique time to be on the coast. And there's so many great opportunities to see them. You can, see them from the beach and the headlands, and even from Tathra Wharf. They come up and, some of them rub themselves against the pylons. It's that close. But it's been very fortunate that I've met a company down here, some great people who run Marimula Marina, a whale watching boat, and been out with them. They're actually lovers of whales and photographers themselves, and so there's a regular group who go out with them all the time and shoot these whales and get photos for them that they use, not only for themselves, it's the joy of it, but for the marketing of their cruise. So, spending a couple of seasons going out regularly, you really get the chance to witness the whales in all their different behavioural patterns, and come out at the end of the season with some great photos. And I'd just like to share a few of my favourites that I've got over the past year. But it's going out, one of the things you in tune yourself with is the behaviour of the whales. They're kind of these amazing, curious creatures with a lot of different behavioural patterns, and the goal of the photography, and it's a lot like bird watching. I think there's addicted whale photographers, but it's to try and capture a series of all different behaviours from the whales, and you get sort of just small things to start off. Whales cruising, you might get a tail or a hump, but as landscape photographers, we just like to add that little bit extra. And over the time of shooting it, you kind of work out that being as low to the surface of the water as possible. So you get down on the deck and and then try and feed a landscape element into this shot as well. And you can see there I've got some layering of the mountains in the background, just to sort of bring that extra element into the shot. This is just one of the the whales on its back with its pectoral fins up. Another sort of.
Davey, what sort of focal lengths are you shooting with?
So I was quite lucky here because I shoot with the Canon. I do my landscape with a Canon 6D, and it's lucky that the guys on the boat, they own a Canon 1DX Mark II with a 100 to 400 lens, which I get to borrow when I'm on there. So it's a big difference from me. I think my frame rate for my camera is like 4 frames a second, but this thing can fire off like 14 frames a second. So it's definitely you need a good high-powered speed camera to
like
get
the R5 or something like that, Dave.
Yeah, which is coming my way.
Baby. 20 frames a second.
Yeah, I can't wait. I was saying before, I've got the new Canon R5 on the way with and treated myself to a 100 to 500 lens, so which should work very well for whale season. So I'm excited about giving that a run.
Fantastic.
And then this is sort of the pectoral fins of the whale, but if you're shooting for a local local tourism, this is Mount Imlay in the background, one of those main mountains I was showing you before. But if you can capture the whales in tune with local landmarks of the area, it just sort of adds that sort of increased interest in the shot this way. And tail shots, I love tail shots. It's one of the things that whales do. Just you can either get them with their tails just flapping around, and a lot of seen it. But this was here's a young calf just tail slapping. They do it for fun. No one really knows reasons why whales behave the way they do. There's lots of different theories. So, and then these are the sort of the classic whale shots. What I love about this particular day was that the light on this day, it was one of those afternoons where we had storm clouds on the horizon, but luckily the sun was peeking out from the other direction. So just lighting up the face of the tails, but sort of decreasing the exposure on the horizon to give that great contrast between the whale itself and the background. Otherwise, if you've got a clear sky on the horizon, it can sort of blow out the exposure a lot. And then if you get a little bit of wind as well on the day, you get these great water motion as the whales sort of breach and so forth. And here's something just a little bit unusual.
Would you be going for more around like a 2,000th of a second with that sort of, to get that freeze, that sort of action? I think
probably 1,000th of a second sort of normally freezes it. But yeah, the higher you can get, the more you obviously you get that freeze. I kind of often just set the shutter speed at 1,000 with a f8, and then maybe adjust the ISO more depending on if the sun's out or not. So, and then I mean, this was kind of one of those great moments in whale watching where we all went out one day and, you know, the populations of whales are recovering. You know, they were hunted to the sort of brink of extinction, and each year there are more and more that come. And this was sort of a behaviour that no one had seen on the coast before, actual whales feeding. It was always thought that the whales only fed in Antarctica. But, you know, we sort of went out in the boat, and this was one of those memorable days where we were kind of going along and you could see the water bubbling, and it was this big school of slimy mackerel fish. And then you could see them all jumping out of the water. And then in addition to that, you see these seals coming in, and then huge pods of dolphin, and then albatrosses and birds all diving in. And then suddenly these humpback whales started like lunge feeding in amongst this big school. And we just basically sat in the boat for about 2 hours watching this go on all around us. It was definitely like one of the David Attenborough documentary films. It was the end. Yeah, we kind of left, and while it was still all going on, but this is looking into the underside of the inside of a whale's mouth with all the raylene that it's got into the teeth that filters all the feed and krill. It was an amazing day. And then, you know, things start getting a bit more exciting when the whales, you know, they come up, which is called a breach, really. So if you head out, whales are breaching, it's a great day. And this is just a fun shot I've got. Looks like the whales waving, and, you know, good fun there. But then, you know, as they start to come out of the water, you kind of, you know, as a photographer, it gets your adrenaline pumping, because you're basically out at sea. You don't know where these whales are going to pop up. They could pop up sort of anywhere around the boat, but you've just got to be ready with your camera all the time. And, you know, there's often about 5 or 6 photographers on board. No one's talking to each other. Everyone's just eyes down the lens, waiting for the shots to come, waiting for the breaches to happen. And, you know, these are some of these great moments that, you know, in photos that I've kind of loved anyway. They're getting, you can see there the beard of the whale underneath, right underneath its chin, trying to get all those details and the rivets going down and throwing a bird in. But yeah, these are the great moments in whale photography. And also having a little bit of wind helps with the water movement. You can see it sort of going down the grooves of the whales. And then this was probably one of the, it's hard to judge scale, but it's probably one of the biggest whales I've seen. This big adult male, almost totally black, just came right up beside the boat and did this huge head lunge. And it was one of my favorite photos from last year. And then, you know, it always helps to look around the back. This is one photo. I just love the different perspective of the whale here. It sort of came out of nowhere and turned around and took the shot, and just luckily just got it just before it sort of went back into the ocean. But just getting these unusual shots of the whales just in different sort of directions that you don't normally see is
fantastic.
Yeah. And then you know, it's always good to get that one classic breach, but you know, the holy grail is when you get 2, called the double breach. And if you get a double breach, then it's time to celebrate. You go out and have beers. Like getting a royal flush in poker.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Never seen that in my life.
Oh, yeah, it's a good experience. But you know, it just goes on and on. Like you can always keep sort of updating. There's some amazing whale photographers around. It's you know, some guys who work on the boat have some incredible shots, you know, of airborne whales, like completely out of the water. There's another a great photographer in Sydney called JP who shoots whales sort of on the Sydney cruises going back into Sydney with the sun setting, and so you get that golden light, getting a whale breach in a golden light with the, you know, Harbour Bridge in the background. You know, the crazy unique shots that these guys and girls get. It's quite addictive. suppose.
So what's the season again? And
Yep.
if you were to go out on one of your mates' whale watching cruises, how likely is it during the season that you will see whales?
Okay, so this season is late September through to early November. Obviously, with the start, at the start of the season, the numbers are smaller, and at the end of the season, they peter out. But October is really peak season, and I mean the good thing is that I suppose it's nature, and you can never be guaranteed. There always might be a day where there's none around. But the good thing is that with the numbers of whales they were sort of hunted to extinction, but they're coming back in big numbers, and they're estimated to be increasing in population about 10% every year. So each year there's more and more whales, and it gets more exciting. And I don't think this year will be any different. The northern migration, they've seen more whales go through. So, but there's always that trip that you don't see something. But then again, there's more frequent trips where you get breach fests going on and multiple whales. And I don't think I ever went out. We never went out and didn't see a whale. Whether it's just depending on how active they are is the main thing. So, yep. But yeah, it can be one day is great, but and I think that's the what I recommend. It's like everything, don't go out just once. If you're holidaying down, go out 3-4 times, because every trip's completely different. So,
Maybe what's the main motivation behind the sort of behaviours?
Well, do you know what? No one really knows. There's lots of theories, but one thing is breaching, potentially knocking barnacles off the whales. You can see, some of those close-up shots, you see all barnacles on there. And I think it's actually true when they're slapping and breaching, it's a way of dislodging barnacles off their bodies, but also possibly a communication technique between the whales. Often when you see one whale start to breach, you see another one in the distance out to sea breach as well, and it possibly could be communication between the two.
It must be super fun as well. I mean, that's got to be the reason, I reckon.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then also you see behaviour change at headlands. So you can follow a whale down down a beach, and then when it gets to a headland, it'll start behaving differently, maybe breaching more or tail slapping. So maybe it's a way of popping up and seeing where they are, and trying to plan navigation for next year's migration. So it's, all these things people are learning more and more every year, and it's actually great to be out there trying to work out, watch all the different behaviours and work out what's going on. It's a bit of a thing to get addicted to. And then one of the great things, meeting these people from Rimbula Marina, they also own a swimming with whales business in Tonga, which unfortunately is not happening this year because of COVID and the travel restrictions, but I went with them to Tonga.
Oh yeah.
And did some underwater, swimming with whales, and that was pretty mind blowing. But that's a whole new photography podcast talk, isn't it?
Oh no, did you find that once you'd sort of been kitted up to shoot the whales underwater, you then had, because you had the underwater gear, you thought about other opportunities to do underwater stuff back at home on the South Coast? Or?
I think I definitely. I think, I don't have an underwater housing at the moment, and I kind of wanted to invest in it once I upgraded cameras. So now that I've got a new camera coming on, I think I will invest in some housing for it too. But I think there's some great opportunities to do underwater photography here. And there's a great local photographer called Louise Kelly, who does the most beautiful underwater shots from the area. Not only, people free diving, but getting vortexes of waves and photographing fish and so forth. The work is just beautiful, absolutely
As
beautiful.
someone like yourself that's into surfing, I would have thought there'd be a really great match to get out there and capture the waves as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's a whole new thing. It's like,
Oh, yes or no, Davey? I'm the world's worst surf photographer because I'm a surfer.
yeah,
Yes.
I
If
think
that's any good, the last thing I want to be doing is standing on a beach or missing out on the waves.
I know. I kind of feel like I'm not waste enough time, but commit enough time to photography and to spend more hours doing more underwater stuff. But is another thing. But yes, I definitely want to do it. And if not only to get practice, to go back and shoot stuff like this, it's incredible.
No, with that, I mean, it's always good to draw the line somewhere, and that's actually a line that I've drawn. I'd probably only do underwater stuff if, you know, I had a housing to borrow and I just happened to be somewhere special that really warranted it. But I think it is good to be able to say, hey, you know, that's kind of, you know, if you add on drones and, you know, if maybe you're doing infrared or you're doing like you do a lot of walking stuff or other commitments with commercial or tourism, you know, you can only add on so many things before it gets too much.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, I think I will cave in. It's like, you know, looking at these pristine waters, sometimes it's almost a crime not to do underwater photography. So watch out. That could be, you know, in the next couple of years.
Fantastic.
And you know, I just wanted to say thanks, guys. That kind of
Awesome.
concludes with the whales. But yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I hope I did.
Oh, it's our pleasure, mate. It's definitely awesome to see some of your work from down on the South Coast and learn a little bit more about the area. And I guess one thing that I would ask about it is, do you actually have a favourite spot down there? Given that, you know, there's so many places you love, is there one that for you kind of gives you the most joy whenever you're there?
Yeah, and it's one that I haven't nailed a shot from yet. It's you know, there's lots of really special areas, and you know, there's a place down here which is, you know, just the most beautiful spot, very close to home, and I won't give it away yet, but
Fair enough.
it's I'm still trying to find that great shot of that spot. So,
Yep.
but yes, and it's a great spot. But I do love I think Gillard's. It's with that rock pinnacle right in the middle of the beach. It's just sort of ancient, and you know, each time you go back, there's so many different things there. It's
Especially if you get that mist as well, and
yeah,
gives a bit of that ethereal feel to it.
yeah, it's great, you know. And when a lot of people come down, you know, I get a lot of people from, you know, city friends come down who want to learn photography, and I take them out there, and you know, for some reason it's quite a grounding place. It feels ancient, and yeah, everyone seems to love it. So yeah, if I pick one spot, it'd be the Pinnacle at Gillard's.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed shooting there as well. Cool. Well, I think one thing we can do, I've got a few photos that I've taken on the South Coast as well, and it does cover a few locations as well that Davey hasn't talked about. I guess he's mentioned a lot of the locations more in the Sapphire Coast, but there is also a few others that are a bit further north in what's the area above that? Eurobodalla, is it? And that sort of shire? Yeah. So I'll just share screen and show a few from there if I can indulge on that. But yeah, I actually run workshops there and traveled there many times myself, and it's certainly it's one of the most one of the best seascape areas you can go to. It's probably not the best shot to lead on, but the reason I'm showing it's more from a documentary perspective rather than any great photography. But this is called Malinbara Point, and so that's a really, really nice location, quite a bit further north, near Moruya, and so it's well worth looking up as a spot, certainly as a stopover on the way down, but it has this amazing sort of pinnacle just sitting in the middle of the beach, and you can see there's a couple people there for a sense of scale. So it is really quite a large rock, and I've been there quite a few times, and I've never really got a shot there that I've been happy with, unfortunately. Even Astro I've struggled with, just mainly because of the conditions, but it's definitely a spot to look into on the way through. And then this one's Half Moon Bay, which is also a lovely little beach in Mimosa Rocks National Park.
Right.
This is Blue Pools. So this is at night. So you can definitely get the Milky Way there. And unfortunately, the water wasn't quite as still as I would have liked. It would have been great to get some star reflections in the actual water as well. But you can definitely play with this sort of lead in with this handrail, and you can sort of see the breaking waves sort of in the back there. So it definitely works. It probably I would have liked to have got there a bit earlier so I could have planned the shot during the day, but very hard work when you couldn't really even see that handrail. It was so dark, but you certainly get beautiful dark skies up there because of very minimal light pollution. So certainly a great place for astrophotography, and that's why I run astro workshops up there. Now I've got a few images of Camel Rock, and I guess a good thing about that, I don't know why that's not showing, it's a bit annoying. This is so you can a lot of folks will go there and they'll go straight to the rocks down in the foreground, but you can sort of go back, obviously watching your step and not trying to disturb the environment at all, but you can find grasses and other things. I think that's even a native geranium there in the rock there, and then looking out over Camel Rock. So what I think is always nice is, for these locations where there's a lot of photos, it's great to be able to go there and actually find something that may be more of a unique composition. This is another feature there. It's actually part of a Vertorama that I've shot a long time ago, but there's a little pool there that has, when it's conditions are right, it's this really deep, vivid blue color, and you can see right down into it with all of these rocks in there. And if you got the right tide, it'll actually overflow and create this waterfall effect, which is quite fun to play with as well.
Is that pool that everybody shoots these days?
No, I mean, a lot of folks do shoot that pool nowadays. I'm not sure which one you're referring to. Do you mean figure eight pool or something like that?
No. That particular pool, I'm sure I've seen in more recent compositions a few times.
Yeah, no, there's.
I haven't seen this shot of yours. So it's
I think I took this one in 2012 or something like that. So it's pretty old. But it's definitely an awesome spot for awesome perspective there. And then I was lucky to get a bit of a rainbow there on one visit, with a beautiful sky, probably not the foreground I was looking for. So that one I thought warranted, just because the sky was doing more. You didn't have to do so much with the foreground. So just another take. You can see here it's completely different in that pool. That obviously was probably one of those times where there was a lot of sand around, and so the sand's actually filled that pool, and it has nowhere near the sort of attractive look that it had before. So it just goes to show how the dynamic and changeable these places actually are. And then Wallaga Lake's really quite pretty. There's actually a caravan park right on, well, there's a couple actually right on Wallaga Lake, and that's a really, really good spot to actually camp, or you can get a on-site van or cabin if you're trying to do things a bit cheaper, and it's also just across the road basically from the Camel Rock car park, which gives you access to Horsehead Rock and Camel Rock. So that's a really great place to stay, and also can catch some of the bird life there. And on top of that, there's also a few jetties and things. If you look around, that's not loading for some reason. This one here, I've shot a few times on under different conditions, and that's Wallaga Lake there too. I think that's Gulaga right there in the distance. So definitely some little gems down there. Around Narooma as well, a bit further north, further north than Camel Rock. You've got Glasshouse Rocks. This is actually looking, sort of Glasshouse Rocks is to the left of this. This is actually looking at the next bay, and that's actually quite an attractive little area itself. But Glasshouse Rocks is actually really a beautiful location for sunrise, and especially at a lower tide where you get these giant rocks reflected in the water. They really are quite an amazing scene when you're walking down there. and playing with those sort of reflections. But also it works really well for astrophotography as well. And so you've got the two rocks here, and that light in between is actually the light of an island called Montague Island. And so that lighthouse is actually shining between, which is kind of cool. And obviously the beautiful Milky Way above. So, and then if you're lucky, you can also get the reflections of the stars and the rocks themselves in the wet sand, which is really cool.
Have either of you guys been across to that Montague Island?
No, Montague, I think you can. They have commercial operation out there, Dave.
Yeah, it's actually great for swimming with seals. There's a seal colony out there.
Yeah.
And great to get that underwater housing and go out and do some seal shots. So
I'm not sure if it's true that you can stay out there, but I believe you can go out there and explore and have a look around and photograph the lighthouse that's out there and things like that. So it's definitely something worth. That'd be probably all out of Narooma. So I'm sure there's some operators there that would take people out. But I do know that diving with the seals there, it's meant to be one of the better places, at least in New South Wales, to do that. So that's definitely a great. And I think it's all, the rock there is all quite interesting too. So I think there'd be probably a lot of shots on there that not many folks have taken, I would have thought.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the rocks. They look really cool.
Yeah. No, Montague, it's something that's always been on my list, and I do intend to tick it off at some point. This is a shot that I got when I was shooting with Davey at Gillard's Beach. And totally agree with him. It's hard to see. I guess you almost need a person to stand next to these rocks to sort of show the scale, but they are quite large. You can climb up on them to shoot from above and get a different perspective. But certainly a very beautiful spot, and I've been wanting to get there for a very long time. So quite accessible as well. Probably more accessible than I thought it was. So that's always very good too. And then one of my favorites is definitely Horsehead Rock, and that's mainly because I visited it once, probably I think it was only the second time I'd been there, and it just so happened that it was a good time for astrophotography. We had a really clear night, and there's really only a month or so where you can get the dark skies and the Milky Way kind of in this position. It's not perfect for astro in some ways, because the rocks, this is looking a lot more south, and so you can see here that the core is quite to the left, and the best way to make up for that's actually to get closer like this, and then the core is sort of sitting a little bit better. I think the horse shape is a lot more attractive at front on like that too, and then the galactic core of the Milky Way rising here. So, and the reason it's only rising is that if it was to rise further, as it rises, it'll actually be going this way, and so it's out of frame. So you really do want it to be a bit lower to the horizon, so you can actually keep it in the shot. It's definitely something that when I run the workshops there, always try to get as kind of our hero shot, because it's such a spectacular location, and really nice being there at night. Also great in the morning with the water flow and things around the rocks. This is my take on the morning with Davey at One Tree as well, and certainly vouch for that as a location. It's really beautiful spot, and again, this probably doesn't show the scale and how tall and big this rock actually is. This was shot, I think, with a 12mm lens, so it's really not providing the full sense of scale there, and how cute it is just to have this tree off the top. I'm sure there's plenty of stories about whether or not someone's actually planted that up there, or how the tree actually got there, but it's very cool. And I had to do a Davey inspired Burmese shot as well, and certainly agree with him about how beautiful the water is, and how easy it is to photograph up there. And the last shot I have from the area is actually it's at Jamison Point, and there's actually some really cool rocks there. looking out. I think that's Potato Point headland out there. And so this was quite a dynamic and interesting area to photograph, and managed to get a shot where there's sort of like these two pillars of water just sort of breaking, and including a friend there for a sense of scale, just to show how big some of these rocks actually are out in this sort of coastline. But it's certainly the rocks and the the rugged nature of it that makes the coastline. And it's sort of reminiscent to me of areas like the Tarkine in Tasmania and others, where the rocks have so much character themselves that they can carry the photograph much further than other areas that don't have that feature. So I just thought I would show some of those. Awesome.
Cool.
Does anybody have any more questions for Davey at all? Has anything come up?
I've got one.
Oh yeah.
Seen it in a couple of shots in the background from Bermagui, but Mount Dromedary. That looks like looking at it on Google, it really sticks out. What sort of stuff's up there?
So Mount Dromedary is actually called Gulaga now. Oh, not Gulaga. Mount Dromedary is the European name. It's actually the mountain's been the land's been given back to the indigenous population, and its original name is Gulaga, which is Mother Mountain. And then there's actually a story that links Gulaga and there's a smaller mountain next to it, and then another. Sorry, I've lost the. Montague Island. Sorry, there's a story that links Montague Island, Little Dromedary, and Gulaga. Gulaga's the mother, and the two sons. One went to the ocean, and one went to the land. And there's a great story around that. But hiking up, there's a beautiful hike up the top of Gulaga or Dromedary, which people do. A lot of people do it as a bit of a spiritual hike. It's a place of healing, and there's a fantastic place about 2/3 of the way up called the Tours, and it's a sacred female space up there that the females would go up and do healing ceremonies and give birth and so forth. But it's the landscape up there is these beautiful sort of ribbon gums. So you walk through and there's just big shards of bark. In the middle of that, there's Tours, these big granite rocks and boulders that are just sort of stacked on top of each other like a huge rock stack.
Yeah, wow.
But there's about maybe 5 different ones all located through. So they're all unique and got their own shape, and they're quite pointy and unique. Definitely you feel a sense of something when you go up there, but that's incredible to look at. And then if you keep going up to the top of Gulaga, around the back, you get this, beautiful sort of green room of moss and trees and tree ferns.
The cloud forest.
Yeah, cloud forest.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. It would attract a fair bit of mist up there.
Yeah. So there's a story about that too. It's called the possum fir. So it does create its own weather pattern up there, a microclimate of which a cloud does come over the top, and the story is that it's Gulaga pulling a possum fir over her.
Oh wow!
Yeah, to keep her, and that's what that is. But yeah, you can go up there on a clear day, and you get up there, and there's a cloud layer at the top of the mountain. So
must be the most incredible view from up there as well, like a panoramic.
It is. Except it's one of those. You can be a bit disappointed when you get to the top, because the actual viewing from the top is there's a lot of trees around, so you actually get that big panoramic view that you kind of expect. So but it's still worth going all the way to the top. So
fantastic.
Cool. Thanks for that.
I mean, what's your system and some of your favorite kind of focal lengths and lenses to use, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I love my favorite lens is a 16-35 for landscapes, and where I'm at now, I either love you know, when doing seascapes, I either love doing, you know, 30 seconds, 2 minutes and smoothing everything out, or kind of love third of a second just to freeze that water. I kind of don't like anything in between, you know, that makes it look like oatmeal. So like,
oatmeal.
You know, that kind of porridgey look that you can get not by smoothing things out. So, I mean, that's where I'm at the moment. I used to love half a second, but even though I think now half a second is a little bit too long, depending on where you shoot. So, but for wave movement, definitely a third to a quarter of a second. Yeah, or 30. So,
and it looks like from the video you're sort of fairly into your filter using, or
yeah. So I've got the Michi filter system. I kind of always use a polarizer,
okay.
And it's more, you know, even sometimes in the morning I use the polarizer for the reverse effect, not to sort of cut through the glare in the sand, but to accentuate it. And I kind of feel that if you accentuate the glare on the sand, you can pick up more of those colored highlights from the sky and bring it into the reflection. So I kind of use it for the reverse purpose of what I use it for. But definitely the drone, I use polarizers all the time.
Yeah, look, I was going to ask. It looked like you did.
Yeah. And then you know, I love the Nissi, the soft grad filter, using that to bring down the sky a lot more. So that's kind of like the two things I use the most: the polarizer and the soft grad. So
yeah, great combination, eh? For coastal stuff in particular.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's kind of basic setup. I use a Surui tripod mainly because I think it's just the best in salt water. I had another tripod before, and I think I'm always getting everything wet, even the camera sometimes, and you know, I'll come out soaked up to my waist most of the time, and everything around it. So the tripod, you know, I've had this one for about 2 years now, and you can get it wet and stand it in salt water and then just run it under a shower or a hose, and it's, you know, always.
You got like a 2204 or a heavier one, or?
No, it's got the 2204
W series, yeah.
Super lightweight.
Yeah.
I try and make sure I've got everything as lightweight as possible. Like I love sort of, you know, doing that multi-day hike and going in. So getting everything into a backpack and sort of taking off is really important. So I would go for lightweight equipment over quality sometimes. So yeah, the lighter it is, the better for me. So
I have to vouch for those tripods as well. I'm probably biased because I'm a ambassador for Suri, but they definitely are very good for. I have to say that. Come on, but they are very good for. That's actually why I used them initially, because I was so good, and then I was like, well, you know, I'd love to represent the brand, so it was kind of the other way around because I loved it so much. But yeah, they're definitely very good for when you're just getting them so wet like that.
Oh yeah, it's like every day I get mine wet, and I remember when I've set my camera in for a service to Canon, you get the call back going, do you live by the coast by chance? Yeah.
I get that.
It's corroded and that's corroded. It's like, yeah, so, and you know, the camera can be fixed, but the tripod stood the test of time, so I haven't destroyed it yet. I'm pretty hard.
I haven't had any problems with Nikons.
Oh well, there's going to be a positive there somewhere, I suppose.
I've got the 1204, which I like, but I feel like I should have got the 2204 just to have a little bit more
heavy
substance to it.
There's definitely a case to have both. I think have a smaller tripod for your walking trips, and when you really want things extra lightweighted, and then have a larger one for when it's a bit windier and you need something that maybe goes a bit taller and has a bit more bulk to it. So I certainly have quite a few different tripods for different uses, and I think that's always a good approach, but it obviously depends on your budget when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, he's got a big beastie one with legs about this big as well.
Yeah, which I'm looking forward to using with a star tracker. I think that'll hold that really well. So yeah, so I think that's it's good to have options.
And then Nick's got the Grand Master Plan tripod, don't you, Nick?
Yeah, I do.
They're really, 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 really expensive, really white stuff. Best of the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, well, I got it. I must say, I got it when the dollar was at parity with the US. So it
So it's
was
appreciated in value then. It's not.
well, pretty much. I mean, to replace it, it cost me, it cost me $600 or $700 on top of the incredibly large amount of money that I spent on the legs in the first place. But I got it because I just thought, geez, I've broken the last one. I'm just going to buy what everyone reckons is really good, and I wanted a really tall one, and yeah, it's great. I've had it 7 years, and it's fantastic. So yeah, but yes, a lot of money, but you do get what you pay for, I guess. Yeah, I do try and look after it.
Excellent investment, Nick. Excellent investment. I kind of wish I'd did the same. I was over in California and had access to and I was earning US dollars even, so I was just like, oh, I kind of wish I did. I bought one of the heads, and I've got their plates, which I find really nice, but I've just didn't quite bite the bullet on the legs. It's like, that's worth more than my car. I was like, what?
Yeah, it is a lot of money, I must admit, and I just decided, well, I spent all this money on my cameras and lenses, and a shitty tripod wasn't doing it for me, so yeah, just decided to go for it. But I don't buy lots and lots of lenses and cameras and stuff. I tend to have a very small amount of gear compared to others, and so just thought I'll spend a lot on this one thing.
Yeah, speaking of spending a lot of money on cameras, I'm forking out $7,000 tomorrow morning on just the camera body. So I'm like, I might be taking a cake on you, Nick.
Yeah.
So if people hadn't been keeping tabs, the Canon EOS R5 gets officially released tomorrow for sale, and I luckily managed to get my hands on the first one that's come in.
You're the only Canon shooter left, aren't you, Paul?
Partly because I'm the only one left, I think, of anybody I know almost. So that was surprising. It was very, very nice to hear Davey's still on the team. I've been shooting 20, 25 years with Canon, so it's hard to leave when you got 12 lenses and you committed. But I have been a little bit, I will not lie, I've been a little bit sort of underimpressed for the last sort of 7 or 8 years since the Mark II, which was quite a revolutionary camera. But I've stuck in there, and I feel like that loyalty's been rewarded potentially with this system, and they've put themselves back into the fore of what's possible. But
if you want to cook up any eggs or anything, you can just leave it in 8K and chuck one on top. And
I'm not going to make any comments about the video.
Okay.
But for me personally, I've still got 5D Mark III bodies, and I haven't actually bought a new camera for 7 years. So it's a very significant upgrade for me. It's got Wi-Fi, tilted screen, autofocus video, iFocus tracking, incredible ISO compared to what I'm using. Like the functionality of the increase of what's happening for me is really significant. I don't get too caught up with the Joneses, but if I see really functional differences in a system, then my ears perk up and I start thinking about it. So
I dangled all sorts of carrots to try and get you on the Sony train, but
he has. He's been working it pretty hard. And after I put in the pre-order, he tells me all this other stuff as well. But I'm also, the other big release in the camera world has been the A7S III, which got released last night, Lucky.
Yes, is that very late?
I actually haven't heard much about it yet because I've been running around chasing big waves today. So I'd love to hear a bit more about it, Luke.
Oh, well, with the A7S III, it's interesting that it's the third generation of the A7S line, which S stands for sensitivity. So it's got a 12 megapixel sensor, has very large photo sights on it. So it's really built for low light photography, but mainly for videos. It's really a video centric device, and the upgrade, it's actually been 5 years that people have been waiting for this camera upgrade, which is a long time. Sony's normally has maybe a 2-yearly release cycle, so it's really unusual. And their excuse or commentary on that was that they really wanted to exceed people's expectations with this release. And I think most people are sort of suggesting that they have actually done that. The main thing from being a long-term Sony shooter that I find interesting is the flip screen. So it actually can flip all the way out and then turn turn around, which is hasn't been done on an A7 series before, and I'm really hoping that they continue that on to all of the other the A7 and the A7R series in the future. I've a good feeling, just a gut feeling, that that'll be included now in the A7 Mark IV, which would make that a very attractive camera to me, because that's a feature I've always wanted. I hate it when it's fine if you're shooting landscape and you can flip the screen out like that, but then when you go portrait, you can't flip the screen out because it only goes one way. So that'll be a huge benefit, I think, for shooting portrait shots. And then also the revamped menu system, which is probably one of the biggest complaints about Sony cameras, is the menu system is hard to navigate. And they've totally redone that. And they've also made it the menu touch compatible now too, which is pretty cool. But I guess the biggest, most noteworthy features is really around the video. And I'm not a video person, so there's a lot of 10-bit 422s and all of this sort of stuff going on, which I have to admit is not my my kind of knowledge base. So, but certainly from what I've read and seen, the specs and what the different video modes it has is quite impressive. And
would it still be rated probably the top low light stills camera in the world though?
I would think so, yeah. I mean, you'd have to do all the testing on that, but I think there is an attraction for me to look into it for more of an astrophotography, light night shooting area. The only real issue there, of course, is that it's only 12 megapixel, and I think 12 is obviously a little bit low for usable photographs, whereas the A7 series is typically about 24 megapixels, and so that's much more usable, and 24 is probably all you really need, unless you're doing billboards or something like that, where you need really big kind of sizes. I think that's a real sweet spot, especially for the night shooting. So I certainly would wait till the A7 IV came out before I would decide either way. But I certainly look at the A7S much more as a video option now. And it's probably speaks a lot to how good the A7 III is. It's a really good low light performer, and so it was very comparable actually to the A7S Mark I, I thought. So in most cases. So yeah, so that's a little bit about that release, and it's definitely an exciting camera to come out and furthers the industry forward and gives people new possibilities and capabilities that they didn't have before, and that's always a very good thing.
Davey, what are you looking forward to about the R5 that you've jumped on the train?
I think particularly with the whale, just the increased shutter speed.
That's going to be magic for you.
It's going to be magic for me. I mean, I've kind of done everything I've done on a 6D Mark II, and sort of loved everything about it. I think just everything.
Camera.
I love it, and I'll be sad to put it into retirement.
Does it have whale eye autofocus?
I think it does actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but particularly for shooting people, all the AI eye focus, and it's a whole new thing. I mean, I can't wait to spend the next 3 months playing with it. It's going to be great.
I think too, for you guys, having shot mirrorless for a long time, one thing you'll probably find quite revolutionary to your photography is going to be the electronic viewfinder, and using that and all of the overlays and extra information, and actually being able to see what the photo is going to look like before you even take it, and that kind of aspect, being able to change the exposure compensation and what you're actually seeing in your eyes is affected by that, is a huge deal, because it makes you not take stuff up and take the wrong exposures. So having zebras in the light in the viewfinder, so that you can see if there's areas of the image that are going to be out of focus, focus peaking through the viewfinder, magnifying the picture through the viewfinder, so that you can fine tune manual focus on the fly and things like that. They're all massive improvements to how you can use your camera. So I think you'll really enjoy that, not having had that before.
No, exactly. I think I might have to go and retake all those photos now again. Camera, so that'll keep me busy for another year.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 500 mil that you've got, you're only shooting at 400 mil before, was that right?
Yeah, there was a 100. I mean, I've got a 100. I got a 70 to 300 for my 60, and then a
Yep.
100 to 400. Yeah, 100 to 500. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, an extra 100 mil is going to make a big difference there.
With all those extra megapixels.
Yeah, and you'll be able to crop a little bit more as well because of
Yeah.
that. And I'm assuming it'd be a very sharp lens, so you'll be able to.
But you'd
do a
hope
lot
so
more.
for the almost $5,000.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just doing all that sort of like fast action shutter speed stuff will be a lot more fun. That's one thing, you know, even birds and sports and, you know, surfing photos. It's just going to.
I'm excited to see the ibis in action in complement with the lenses. Like if you get 8 stops of
8 stops is huge.
stabilization is crazy.
I don't think Sony can get near that. Yeah.
And for video as well, you know, like shooting by hand and having the tracking capacity and the video as well. There's probably all sorts of things you can potentially do now off the back of the boat through video that you never would have had a chance of doing before.
Even just looking through the viewfinder and focusing on the whale, and you're going up and down, but the picture's nice and still, would be a huge benefit for you. Massive. What was the other thing I was just thinking? I was just wondering too with the 100, that 100 or 500, what the f-stop, what the minimum aperture is at 500 mil.
Oh.
Is it like a 4.5 to 5.6 sort of thing?
That's such a lit question.
I was just interested how much light you still get. You got to play with it 500, but I guess the good thing is when you're whale watching, it's normally out during the day and you've got bright sun, and you know, I don't think you'll be struggling for shutter speed or anything like that with. Or having to push serious ISOs. Maybe if it was more like low light shooting birds in a forest or something like that, it's a bit more of a struggle. But whales, I think you've got a lot more light there, so that's handy.
Yeah. No, I'll work that out and get back to you on that.
Just Google it, for God's sake. Luke.
What? I'm just
Google it,
interested.
Loki.
This is what we're meant to be talking about, this stuff. All
Yes,
right.
of course.
Yeah, no, I had a good look at that too until I saw the price tag and thought, well, the camera's enough for me right now.
No, it's very, and you're going to get the standard adapter, Davey, or the because there's apparently a few different adapters you can get for the EF
control ring
lenses.
one, and there's a video one.
I'm getting on new glass with it as well. Like,
all right.
I've sort of like managed to, you know, like Nick, just operate as I do now, just really on the basics. The glass I've got now is not special, and you know, I've been, you know, squirreling away for a big investment into you know, a decent pro body and some great lenses for a while. So this is my big investment, so to speak. So, you know,
I think it's a good point to do it, especially having all native, having the lenses that are built for that system, that they're always going to perform better than sort of retrofitting old lenses. And I certainly know that going from Canon to Sony, and then I was adapting Canon lenses onto the Sony bodies for quite a few years. And once you change over to the native lenses, the performance is considerably better. Although I do believe that the adapters made the Canon lenses the EF lenses perform still quite well on the RF body. So that's actually quite a good thing.
I spoke to James Simmons the other day about this very thing, because I wanted to get an on-hand sort of, before I dropped that sort of coin. I thought, let's pick someone who's actually used the camera and given it through its paces. And he actually said some of his older Canon lenses perform better with the new focus, the adapter. Like his 85-1.2 actually focuses twice as fast now, which is quite interesting. So I'm fingers crossed. So I don't have the funds to switch to the RF lenses. They're very expensive. I think they're very, very good, but they're even more expensive than the current sort of EF line, actually.
I guess that's what another way that Canon can continue selling new things, by bringing out a whole new line of different lenses. So it's worked out well for them in that respect. There's actually been a comment made too on YouTube about the GFX 50S, and that you can buy that for a similar money to the R5, and we actually had that chat, didn't we, Paul, about
we did.
maybe the Fuji not really suiting your shooting style.
I think the Fuji, probably, I'd be interested to compare the image quality. I would be guessing the Fuji we're next, like, when are we finishing? How are you, Nick? We love you, mate. I've been watching it scratching away, getting ready to run off. Anyway, we'll finish up in a few minutes. But I got lost my train of thought. Yeah, the Fuji. So Fuji, secondhand Fuji GFX 50 would be on par with this as a new body. So I really considered that. But I feel like if you're already so used to this, you don't have to learn a new system. You know, you don't have to get any new lenses. And I think as a system, it's incredibly versatile. It's useful for video and baking eggs. It's excellent for portraiture. It's brilliant for landscapes. It can handle, you know, movement, action, low light, astro. Like it can pretty much do anything pretty well. Kind of like the D850, to be honest, Nick, which I personally think for a long time has been the best DSLR in the world, and probably more robust in a lot of ways as well. And that almost switched me over from Canon, actually. That D850, that's an incredible. Well, that whole D800 line, really. For the last 7-8 years.
I've been tempted in it for a long time, and I've always said the main reason I never went there, even before I was had closer relationship with Sony, was that that they just never had a 16 to 35 2.8 that you could put a filter on. So otherwise, I possibly would be that way myself, because they are very good cameras. Yeah,
they're all good. Look, all of them are great. But I think you're right, Paul. I think your style of shooting, having watched you shoot a lot of events and as well as your landscape stuff, and I think it really would suit you more than the Fuji. I think the Fuji is probably a bit slower for your style of sort of sniping, I suppose.
And the other side to it too is that with the Fuji, you definitely need to get new lenses, so it's much more than $7,000 really. Yeah. Whereas given that you've got all the Canon lenses, you just need the adapter and you're good to go. So that's obviously a massive consideration as well.
Yeah, it's really hard apparently to get a hold of the basic adapters. DigiDirect has none in stock, and there's none in the store I'm going from, but they do have one with the ring, so I might end up just sucking it up and getting the ring and maybe using it for ISO. I think on the R, you really needed a control ring because it was quite limited controls manually relative. But by switching and trying to mirror this kind of 5D line into the mirrorless system, they've incorporated and brought in a lot more of the manual sort of control features, so it's less significant.
I think you'd probably end up finding a really good use for that control ring. You know, it's one of those things you don't really know how good it can be until you.
Here we go. Anthony Younghusband, the ring is crap. All right, thanks, Anthony.
All right.
That one. Well, I could wait a month and not be able to shoot, or I could get the one with the ring. Right. That looks like my options for tomorrow morning.
With the Sony, they've got this focus hold button on the lens, and for ages I just thought I don't need to hold focus, and then I realized you could program it to whatever you like, and now I've set it to crop. So whenever I want to crop in, I just press that button, and then I can punch in 1.5 times, and then press it again, it punches out. So, you know, just because it has a feature that you don't think you have a use for, you know, there's always a chance that there's something that could work for you down the track, but maybe it's just crap.
Yeah.
Right. On that note, perhaps we should wrap up.
No, that's a pretty good point. We did indulge on camera talk, but I think with so many great releases, it had to happen. And talking to Davey and him also going to the R5, it is exciting times for people. Yeah. Nice to have some excitement after all of the awful things that have been happening in the world.
It's quite nice.
Yeah. And so, look, I just really, really want to thank Davey for joining us tonight and sharing his passion for the South Coast. And I'm really hoping that I can get over, mate, and visit and spend some more time over there soon. It's definitely one of my favourite places in the world. And I know I've told you that if there was a place that I could choose to live on the mainland that I'd love to be, that'd have to be probably, well, I can't move there because you're there, obviously, and I don't want to compete against you. But apart from that, it'd be a place I'd love to live myself. But thanks so much for joining us, mate, and looking forward to following your journey. And is there any ways that you can people can see your work, and what's the best place to go?
Well, I suppose thanks guys for having me on. It's awesome. I love talking about this area. It's a real passion for me, like a passion place for me. So it's been easy to talk about. and love what you're doing with your talks as well. So I feel really honoured to be on. But yeah, if you anyone coming to the area, just shoot me a note. I'd probably upload my sort of current stuff first on Instagram, which is Davey_Rogers. But if you people want to get in contact, shoot me a note, and really happy to catch up and go shooting as well. But yeah, look at that. And also I want to say hello to Fiona Brook. I've seen her down there nodding and smiling. She's another Sapphire Coastie,
Awesome.
out on my boat a lot. I see that, the head nodding and the smiles coming. So she can vouch it's a great place to live and be a photographer as well. So, but yeah, we're a friendly bunch, Fiona. So it's like, get in contact and happy to show you around.
Oh, that's awesome. It's awesome that you sort of support people that are coming through and helping them enjoy the time there as well. So absolutely. And so, yeah, we've got a few other photographers coming up that we're in discussions with at the moment, and covering off different areas. At the moment, we'll at some point have Will Patino on talking about the Fjordland, and also Dylan Toe talking about Adelaide and South Australia. Just trying to lock in dates for those guys at the moment. Yeah, I don't think we've actually got a clear plan for next episode that we can share with you, but we'll get back to you sort of around the weekend on what's going on next week. But
also looking at doing an Iceland one with potentially Matt Palmer and Serena. I don't know her new last name. She's
Serena Zenas, yeah, who lives in
live from Iceland potentially.
Yeah,
So we'll see if we
so
can line
that'll
up dates with those guys, and that would be, I personally would love that. And Lukey spent time there as well.
Yeah, it's
We'll get there one day, Nick. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, you can do a
I haven't even
Scotland
been
one,
to the Sapphire Coast.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us all, and we'll definitely be back next week on Wednesday at 7:30. Until then, thanks for joining us, and have a great evening. Catch you later.
Night, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Davey.
Thanks,